Excellent. So what was the design brief for the Escala concept, and how does it represent Cadillac's mission moving forward with Daring Designs?
Okay. So with any great concept, you do start with a really strong brief. And the idea that we had was one of simplicity, in that it was about design a car that you would love yourself to drive. We added a little complexity to it by saying it should also be a car that you can be chauffeur driven in. So for the designers, it was intriguing. I want a car that I can drive, but that I can also be driven in. And that's really what led to the car. So we wanted to have really two different personalities to the vehicle. So sitting in the rear should obviously be a really relaxing experience, but sitting in the front should be an engaging driving experience. So I guess the first thing is, when I moved into this role, for me, I wanted to have an education of what is Cadillac really about. So with Ed Welburn, we went through the Heritage Center and we looked at lots of the previous concepts. And what I noticed is each concept was different to the one before, but they all had something in common, and that was this bold, optimistic design and this integration of technology. So in that way, I would say this concept is very like the concepts that have come before it, but in reality, it's also about evolving the DNA of the vehicle. So taking the design forward into the future, not looking back. And that really was, the design philosophy. The designers embraced it. My message to them was it shouldn't be mistaken for any other Cadillac, and it certainly shouldn't be mistaken for any other brand. Well, the heritage is so rich. Johan mentioned earlier that the brand is going to be 114 years old this year. So there's such a rich heritage to draw from. But the great thing is that all the great Cadillacs, they didn't look like the one before them. They're always pushing forward, and that's what we want to do. So I think that certainly we wanted to retain the Cadillacness that people would recognize on the road. I think the simplicity in the design, while it's sophisticated, it is simple, it's a memorable design. So what I mean by that is you could draw on a napkin 1, 2, or 3 lines to convey what the vehicle is about. And that's certainly what I see in Cadillacs today as well. So I'd say certainly the headlamps and tail lamps are something that we're really excited about, because we already kind of own this vertical light signature, but I don't want it to get stale. It has to continue to evolve. So I'd say the sinister front end of the Escala is something that you'll see, or certainly it will influence future products going forward. And the rear end as well. It's not just a simple vertical lamp anymore. There's a whole lot of detail to it. And again, I want to make sure that that influences future products. So I guess there's a couple of features I really like, but if I had to pick one, the rotary controller in the center of the vehicle is really a beautiful piece of jewelry. And we wanted it to be something that was really celebrated. The whole interior is almost swirling around this rotary controller. It has layer upon layers of detail. It was inspired by something that I'm quite fond of, which is vintage watches, but it's also inspired by vintage Cadillacs. And in particular, you'll see floating in the center is a reinterpretation of the classic goddess that Cadillac had through the 30s and 40s. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Excellent. So, that's a good one right here. How long did it take to design this car? What was the process like?
So, I'll answer it in reverse order. I'm completely exhausted. The process is insane. What I mean by that is we typically talk about what we want to do well in advance, but it takes a little over a year from kind of the first sketch until we have a show car built. The design process is really exciting because it's very creative. I try really hard to make sure that the designers feel like they have the freedom to really propose whatever they want to do, and we spend a lot of time talking about brand positioning, about the persona of the brand and the flavor of the design we're trying to achieve. But it really is building the car that is the most exciting and the most stressful, because I could use an analogy that if you're redecorating your home, as you start to put elements together, you start to change things and tweak things. And usually we're on a pretty tight timeline, so the guys who are building the car are usually pretty accommodating, but they also have to build a fantastically tailored and beautifully executed vehicle. So there's always that tension, but it's such a great process. I just love it, absolutely love it.
It's very intriguing. It's
so
beautiful.
It's a fairly complex paint. It's hard to describe, but it's about 9 different layers. The last layer is a fairly inky tinted black layer to really give it a lot of drop off. But it was, again, we had talked about the inspiration of the goddess. So the name of the paint is Gaia, inspired by that goddess. But it certainly is a color that has warmth to it, but we didn't want it to be any particular color. It was more about the mood.
Yeah.
Sophistication.
It's beautiful. I love it.
Yeah, in the flesh, it's a pretty amazing
It's amazing,
color.
yeah. Every time I've seen it, it's been a little bit different, and it's able to pull the lines out, which can be subtle, and it's
well, and that was really important when we chose the color, because we don't want this to look like an origami car. We have a few simple lines, but we want everybody to understand the sophistication in the surfacing. When you see this tomorrow in the sunlight, it'll be completely different.
Excellent. I'm sure everyone can't wait to see it in the sunlight because it
Yeah.
has a lot of amazing details.
Yeah.
So Andrew, thank you very much. We
Hey,
appreciate
no
your
problem.
time.
It was a pleasure.
And thanks for designing such a beautiful car.
Thank you. All right.